Smash Ultimate's DLC fighters are very hit or miss in the context of competitive play. Either they're extremely popular to an almost intrusive level, or hardly anyone gives them the time of day outside of a few enterprising individuals. Banjo and Kazooie, despite having a cult following brought on by nostalgia, sadly fall into the second category. There's actually been discourse about whether they're deserving of the title of weakest DLC fighter or if that should go to Plant, who's technically DLC but also not really since he wasn't officially a part of Fighters Pass 1 if I remember correctly. As part of a roster with experimentally overtuned or overloaded mechanics, Banjo sticks out like a sore thumb for being mild to a fault. They have a few gimmicky things, but they're not very conducive to their competitive success. For today's episode of Why No One Plays, we're going to talk about Banjo and Kazooie, arguably the least popular fighter among the DLC roster. Trying to pinpoint what kind of fighter Banjo is can be rather tricky. They're a tag team fighter not unlike Duck Hunt, although it's more in nominal terms, as opposed to Rosalina and Luma's tandem attacking or Pokemon Trainer's actual tag and tag out system. True to their physics back home, depending on which of the two you use, you can get widely different results. For example, Banjo's initial dash and traction are among the worst in the game, causing them to easily slide after moving, but while dashing, you'll notice Kazooie takes over and the two travel quite fast on the ground. Their trademark triple jump and wonky air physics pay homage to their aerial movement back home, leading to poor airspeed and acceleration but fast falling speed and high gravity. Not only that, but their combined weight makes for a pretty hefty combination, tying them with Snake and Rob as the 18th heaviest in the game, which can be deceiving at times, what with their stature. Now comes the more notable part. Roughly a third of Banjo's attacks involve him, while the remaining 2/3 make use of Kazooie, and any attacks involving the latter are entirely disjointed, as she doesn't have an active hurt box of her own. Outside of smash attacks, moves that make use of Kazooie are generally longer in reach but lacking in power, while moves that come directly from Banjo are much stronger but shorter in range and often laggier on startup. This will be important later. Some of their attacks give off the impression of being a close quarters brawler. Others play more spacing and mid-range, capitalizing on Kazooie's inability to take damage. At the same time, they can also be played at long range thanks to their specials. Rear egg spawning an egg-shaped grenade that can be used as a throwing item or active collision, not unlike Rob's gyro or Link's remote bomb. Meanwhile, Regal Blaster allows them to rapidly fire out smaller eggs from Kazooie with a similar behavior to Mega Man's Mega Buster. Interestingly, they can also opt for a grappling strategy courtesy of a rather decent grab range that comes out frame 7, while having two situationally good throws, down throw used to engage berry kill setups, and back throw having exceptional KO power. Speaking of KOing, that aspect can be both their strongest and weakest asset depending on how you see it. Thanks to their wide variety of setup options like the aforementioned throws, the hit stun provided by Rear Egg and Regal Blaster, as well as some interesting positional knockback on some of their attacks, Banjo can pull off some really obnoxious kills. Forward air, while slow, has deceptively high range in a similar fashion to Yoshi, given that Banjo pulls himself back before lunging forward, and the kill power rivals that of Dr. Mario or Ganondorf, who also have overhead swings. Up tilt has ridiculously high kill power for a move category not known to have. We're talking like Snake up tilt levels of strong. Okay, maybe not that strong, but sometimes it feels like it. It's also safe on shield at -10, so in many ways, it's an identical if not slight downgrade to Snake's up tilt. Then again, Snake's up tilt is one of the best in the game, so being slightly worse is still strong. Forward smash is a move you see Banjo spam often on account of it functionally being a sword smash attack. While slow, it is very long range, is decently safe on shield if spaced, has big enough hitboxes to 2-frame, and is outrageously strong, easily closing out your stock below 100 near the ledge, which is terrifying for a move that can hit said ledge. Outside of 2-framing, it's a good retreating whiff punish option through its excellent diagonal coverage, so anyone approaching with an aerial such as a rising nair or fair can get smoked with this attack. Lastly, their most trademark burst option, Wonder Wing, a straightforward dash attack with an active hitbox. The kicker is that Wonder Wing leaves them completely invulnerable throughout the attack, making it without question uncontestable by anything that isn't a grab or Terry's Buster Wolf. Beyond that, your only way to deal with this is to block or avoid the hit, which most players opt for, as trying to time a regular grab has too high of a risk relative to the payoff. Wonder Wing has crazy power, especially at the beginning of the attack. It deals upwards of 25% damage, travels very far giving it great cross-up potential on shield, and its invincibility practically guarantees you will make it safely back to ledge. The apparent caveat is, of course, that you can only use Wonder Wing 5 times per stock at most, which if we consider the vast positives of this move is a fair trade-off at first. When used correctly, Banjo can pull off really cheesy offstage kills with this move. And while risky, it does have uses outright. For example, you can use Wonder Wing to catch an opponent's landing if they have a habit of throwing at a landing aerial. It can also be used to challenge any delayed recovery without fail, such as Ike or Chrom's up B. It can be used as a tech chase thanks to its great distance coverage. It has a lot of upsides, the only real downsides being its finite uses and high end lag if blocked or dodged, but with its high shield damage and far travel distance, unless your opponent was already a sufficient distance away from you before you used it, by the time they drop shield to chase after you, you're likely able to move again. So one last aspect of the gameplay I want to give mention to is that Banjo is surprisingly effective at gimping opponents with bad horizontal recovery. Their up special springboard has the same doinking properties as Sonic's on spring jump, while down tilt is an absurdly long-range disjointed ground poke with a painful launch angle. Putting it all together, Banjo's unorthodox move pool makes for a superficially versatile fighter with an ambiguous threat bubble. But ultimately, the bulk of their applicable gameplay would fall under the heavyweight trapper archetype, so kind of like Rob, Snake, and Link. You spend most of your time pressuring opponents through stage control and mid to long range attacks, usually projectiles, and then once your opponent runs out of patience and starts charging headfirst at you, you can punish them with setups and finishers. Considering their range of options, from close to far, Banjo should at least command a decent following. But there are two things that separate them from Rob, Snake, and I suppose Pac-Man to some extent. Key of which being they have considerable weaknesses to balance out and in some cases cancel out their strengths, even though those strengths don't really need to have a balancing factor. When designing this kind of playstyle, like I sort of alluded to in the last episode with Link, if you're going to conceptualize a jack-of-all-trades type character, you have to almost essentially overtune them to make them worthwhile to play. Link is played less often than Snake and Rob because he's balanced, equal strengths and equal weaknesses, but in a competitive environment, players will do everything they can to maximize their return on investment. That's why the most popular fighters have a low skill floor but high skill ceiling complemented by very high returns. Rob's a jack-of-all-trades, but each of his attacks are absurdly broken. Same thing with Snake, a trapper with life-threatening projectiles, some of the best close quarters tools in the game, and the ability to blow his way out of any lost neutral interaction. Comparatively, Banjo seems to have missed out on the extra perks that every other DLC fighter has gotten, or in other words, they're balanced. That's the first problem with Banjo. If you're a balanced jack of all trades, you're also a master of none. It's true they have some really interesting attacks with great applications, but overall they're not so overly strong to make them stand out. It may sound bad, but for this kind of archetype, it's almost obligatory to have moves that defy balance constraints, since if they aren't, you'll forever be caught in a limbo where you have some semblance of everything, but not enough of everything. Against close-range fighters, Banjo will assuredly lose. Some of their moves, especially those involving Kazooie, have serviceable frame data, F-tilt being frame 7, dash attack frame 9, nair frame 10, back air frame 8, up air frame 7. You could do worse than that, not to mention the added safety margin of Kazooie's disjointed range. But under no circumstances will you be able to go toe-to-toe with the tried and true brawlers like Wolf, Captain Falcon, Fox, Terry, Roy, Pikachu, Mario, and whatnot. For you to comfortably take them on, you need Pac-Man levels of frame data, but that reinforces the point of needing to be borderline unfairly good at stuff like that. Pac-Man's frame data is frankly bullshit for his Zona Trapper hybrid. Literally all of his normals barring smash attacks are single-digit frame data, of which many of them have low single-digit frame data like 5, 6, and 7. Pac-Man can easily tango with the mashy fighters like Sheik, Fox, Mario, and Terry. Now what about the rest of the group, the mid-rangers? This is debatably more of a problem for Banjo than close-range fighters. Swordies are among the most played characters in the current metagame as people realize that safety takes precedence over aggression with how easy it is to explode off of a single bad mistake. Banjo has substantially disjointed range on some of their moves. Forward tilt, down tilt, forward smash, back air, up air, and down air are pretty much on the same level as sword moves. Even so, they're not acknowledged as a proper swordie since the only thing they have is the range of a swordie, not the power, coverage, or application of them. For one, their attacks are very unsafe on shield. Generally speaking, for a move to be regarded as safe on shield, it needs to be -6 or better, as most grabs are frame 7, most up smashes out of shield are around the 8 to 12 frame ballpark, and unless your name is Game & Watch or Samus, most upbeats are about frame 7 or higher. So rule of thumb is, if you're -6 or better, you're in the clear. Remember though, that's assuming you have frame perfect landing, so in practice, you want to have a -5 or even -4 aerial to account for a 1 to 2 frame margin for error. Using Ike, attacks like nair and back air just barely make the cut for being unsafe on shield. However, he gets a bit more leeway through spacing. So even if he doesn't land perfectly, some characters simply don't have an out of shield option that can reach far enough. Banjo's back air has great range behind him, but it can't be used as a shield pressure tool since it's -16 on shield. Virtually everything in the game can punish it. Nair on shield doesn't work either, it's -14. Comparing Banjo to another one of his cohorts, Rob. Rob's mid-range attacks like nair, back air, and stuff are far safer on shield. Nair is -3, one of the best in the game. Back air is -9, but thanks to pushing him back as well as the massive shield stun, you'd be hard pressed to punish back air, like, ever. Then there's the issue of power. Attacks involving Kazooie have awful knockback scaling, and are really only used for poke or chip damage. Good mid-ranged attacks are designed to be very powerful straight hits and neutral. That's what makes them such a threat. Not only do they attack a wide area, but they can also kill. Banjo doesn't have this privilege. This makes Kazooie's disjointed attacks not as impressive as they may look. The only real advantage they have is being disjointed. They lack the safety and offensive pressure. Long range can also be a weird spot for them. While rear egg is a very annoying projectile to deal with, it's not a very practical one if we pit it against others in neutral. For trapping and controlling space, it's fantastic. The brief stall it gives in the air can help you mix up landings and offer a bit of safety as you escape disadvantage, but with how long it takes and the fact that Banjo has to re-grab the egg before it turns into an offensive throw item gives it a very long cooldown. So anyone with a remotely faster projectile like Cloud's Blade Beam, Mario's Fireball, Snake's Grenades, Mega Man's Metal Blade, what have you, can snuff them out faster than Banjo can make them. Furthermore, Regal Blaster takes too long to get to the rapid fire part, whereas Mega Man can spam lemons immediately. There's a reason Pac-Man's bonus fruit, Snake's Grenades, Rob's Laser Beam, and Gyro are as aggravatingly overpowered as they are. If they weren't, that would severely hinder their usability. Their pressure is high enough to force opponents to approach them. Banjo's projectiles are not. They're too slow and too weak to play the game of chicken against a non-melee exclusive fighter. The only place they excel in is setups and controlling space, and this is where the second difference comes between Banjo and other trappers. See, due to their average at best repertoire, Banjo doesn't really have a clear bread and butter flowcharty game plan, crucial for a jack of all trades or trapper character to have. By no means are they lacking in combos or setups, but complicating their use cases is whether or not it's the definitive right thing to do at that time. What makes something a bread and butter is not if it exists, but if it works 100% of the time no matter who you're fighting against. Snake's Grenade Shield Explosion into an aerial is a bread and butter attack because it works against anybody foolish enough to attack his shield while he's holding a grenade, and it works every time. It's an easy 30 to 40% in damage. Rob's landing nair into whatever is a bread and butter because it works every time against everyone. Basic combos like up throw into rising fair at low percents or things like up tilt into up air at mid percent. All of these work. Conversely, Banjo doesn't really have any of these. Sure, they have stuff like rear egg into forward air, but unlike Link's Boomerang into forward air or Ivysaur's Razor Leaf into aerial or Vine Whip, rear egg isn't an immediate combo projectile. It's used to control space that can be used for combos. A lot of Banjo's gameplay entails 50-50s or straight hits in neutral. They can't really force anything of their own accord since the numbers just aren't there to support it. That's why you only really see Banjos online, where the average skill level of players is worse and therefore easier to exploit via matchup check, plus the added latency makes it harder for you to react to what would otherwise be obvious traps. There's no clear indication of what to do when in doubt at low, mid, and high percent. At the same time, you can't take matters into your own hands and play solitaire on your opponent the way other zoners or trappers can. Essentially, since Banjo doesn't have enough quote-unquote unfairness in their moves, more emphasis is placed on fundamentals to find or create opportunities to do what you are able to do. But at that point, if you're gonna play fundies, Banjo wouldn't and shouldn't even be on most people's list of candidates. A fundies playstyle necessitates pressuring, stage control, conditioning, and option coverage. Banjo's equipped for half of these. I say half because that's their entire identity. They only have half of what is required to do anything. Half the necessary things to play close range brawling, half the necessary things to play full-on trapper, half the necessary things to play fundies. In short, no one plays them because they just aren't remarkable. They're perfectly average. You have characters that may be worse than them in certain areas, but far better in others. For instance, Luigi may have a lot of egregious issues, but he's so good at messing you up if you give him even a single opportunity that you can put all your eggs into the zero to death basket and achieve good, albeit inflated results. Same with someone like Lucas. Lucas is by all accounts worse than Ness, but his edge guarding is so free you can cheese a lot of matchups from that alone. Banjo needs something to specialize in. I just don't get how they missed out on all the perks of being DLC while everyone else got something. Then again, I don't ever want Banjo to be top tier, they're annoying to deal with as is. Anyways, that's gonna be it for today. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree or disagree with my points. Aside from that, hope you enjoyed the video. If you have, I'd appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at VarsFM, join my Discord server, and check out my other Why No One Plays episodes if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.